In this strange city, the liars make up for half of the population of the city. The residents only care about themselves and always have doubts about the others. The protagonist of the story is a man who wears a blue coat. His name is Taka, and he is a scammer. He sells everything he can as long as it could get him some money. Taka usually sold weight loss pills out on the streets. Many people had fallen for his words. The things they had bought were just bottles of water, and the price they paid for them wasn't cheap at all. One customer seemed to be skeptical of the effectiveness of the pills that Taka introduced to him. However, as a good communicator, Taka eventually succeeded in convincing the customer to buy his product. It seemed like a productive day for Taka, as he had sold a good amount of his products. He didn't expect many people would easily fall for his words. While Taka was counting the money he had made, it started raining. Not knowing if it was the rain or something else that made Taka felt really uncomfortable in his nose. Occasionally he had a throbbing pain as if it was being pierced by a needle. That day Taka had a workshop session with his potential customers. With his old tricks, he deceived them into buying his products and joining his system. While he was talking to his customers, he suddenly felt uncomfortable in the nose. He touched it, realizing that it was swelling, but he had to endure the pain. But he started to feel even more uncomfortable, as if there was something like a nail coming out of his nose. Taka started to feel dizzy. His face was dripping with sweat. He felt exhausted and couldn't even stand still. Having no other choice, Taka had to cut out the talk with his customers and went to the restroom. At first he thought that he had sinusitis, but it turned out to be worse than he thought. His nose was bruised and had some cracks on it. What even more shocking was, from inside the cracks, a seed sprouted. Despite witnessing everything as he looked at the mirror, Taka couldn't believe his eyes. It wasn't just a shoot growing in his nose. Taka also felt its root was radiating inside the nose and slowly filling his respiratory tract. Taka was so shocked that he couldn't even move. He stared at the mirror with his eyes wide open. He screamed, yet couldn't make it to be heard. Knowing how serious the situation was, that evening Taka took a day off and caught a taxi to the hospital to have a check. As soon as he met the doctor, Taka immediately expressed his concern with a bizarre tree growing in his nose. The doctor conducted some necessary tests. It seemed like the doctor had no idea about the disease that Taka was dealing with. However, many people in the city were also having the same situation. According to the X-ray, it looked like the roots of the tree were filling Taka's respiratory tract. However, in some miraculous way, it replaced a nose to help him breathe, so it would be dangerous to cut it off. The only advice that the doctor could give Taka was to tell him not to physically hurt the shoot on his nose, and patiently wait. Taka immediately got scared. He begged the doctor to help him. The doctor shook his head. He also added that if Taka let the sprout grow up, it would absorb all the nutrients in his body. At first, Taka might feel a little bit tired, but he would slowly become weaker and therefore his life might be at risk. Having listened to what the doctor told him, Taka felt like everything had collapsed in front of his eyes. The doctor also revealed to Taka a fact that he wasn't the only one that got infected with this bizarre disease. He asked Taka if he had often lied to people. Taka slowly looked up, hesitantly told the doctor that he had never lied or deceived anyone. Then the shoot in his nose immediately wiggled and grew longer. It turned out that the real cause of this strange disease was the lies. It was hard to believe, but it was true. Seeing the shoot growing longer, the doctor didn't bother to look at it. He turned away and told Taka to be a genuine person if he didn't want to die because of a tree seed. Taka walked out of the hospital with a heavy heart. There was a thought in his mind he kept thinking about. Was it the way life worked? Didn't people lie all the time? How can there be anyone that doesn't tell lies? How could there be a salesman that doesn't lie to his customers about the products that he sells? How could there be a child who never lied to their parents in order to hide the bad marks and the mischievousness? There were men telling lies to women, pouring honey into their ears in order to achieve their purposes. Taka looked around him and he realized people all had shoots in their noses. So why did he have to be embarrassed while he looked just like the others? Was the virus truly scary like the doctor had told him? A month later, not only him, everyone in the company had shoots growing in their noses. For Taka, the tree in his nose had grown taller and firm, which meant that he had lied a lot of times to the people around him. Contrary to the increasing number of employees infected with the disease, the profit of the company had declined sharply. But the truth was, no one wanted to believe a person with a shoot in their nose. After a month, the news of the strange disease had been spreading rapidly, and everybody knew the reason why it happened in the first place. So it would be more difficult to trick people into buying those fake, ineffective pills. With a small tree growing on his nose, Taka couldn't sell his products to anyone. Some even looked at him with contempt. They even insulted him, angrily cursed at him every time he introduced the products to them. Not just his work, but his life got turned upside down. He only realized it when the tree on his nose had grown bigger, something that he didn't expect. Everywhere, even at the convenience stores and the markets, were placed with signs that prohibited people with shoots on their noses. Taka just wanted to buy a bottle of water, but the waiter didn't want to serve him. They told Taka to read the sign in front of the shop. No liars allowed. Please go somewhere else. As Taka heard what the waiter said to him, he just became silent, not knowing why people were treating him like that. A month later, as the company couldn't sell its products, it had to go bankrupt. Taka lost his job, and with a tree on his nose, he couldn't apply to any other company. Taka still tried to sell the remaining products via phone calls, hoping that someone would buy them as they couldn't see his face. Taka also called his friends to borrow some money, but they rejected. With all the phone calls that he made, the only thing he could receive was a tree that had grown bigger every day. It was no exception this time. His lies had made the tree grow faster. It also grew branches and developed unlike any other normal tree that grew on soil. Soon the weight of the tree had made Taka's face unable to hold it. It made him fall to the ground. Taka now truly knew how frustrating it was to keep this tree on his nose every day. Gradually walking normally on the streets had become something beyond his ability. As he looked at the other salesmen, he wished that he could go back to the way it was before, going to work every day, eating good, dressing fashionably. As Taka was reminiscing about the better days that he once had in the past, suddenly from behind, a hand was placed on his shoulder. Behind him was a man with blonde hair, wearing a leather jacket, having piercings, not look like a decent person at all. The man asked Taka if he wanted to remove the tree. Taka was surprised by the offer. He was curious. The man told Taka to follow him and keep quiet if he wanted to get rid of the tree. As Taka realized that he had nothing else to lose now, he agreed to go with the man. As they arrived at the destination, the blonde man stopped Taka, telling him to wait outside as he needed to talk to his boss. As the door was opened, there was lousy noise coming out. It was like there was a fight going on inside. Two men were fighting at each other. The bigger one was holding the one with a tree on his nose onto the ground. The blonde man pulled out his knife and spun it in his hand. He rushed to the fight in order to assist his accomplice. He grabbed the tree on that man's nose and quickly cut it off. Outside, Taka was looking at them through the gap on the door. Now he had found out the true colors of these people. Taka trembled in fear as he witnessed how brutal the men were. Having regained his composure, Taka quickly ran away, but he accidentally let the men know about it. Of course, they wouldn't let Taka easily get off. Taka quickly made his way out of the dark alley while the men were chasing him from behind. He screamed for help, but nobody cared about him. They just thought that he was a madman. Not giving up, Taka tried to stop them and told them about the brutal acts of the murderers that were chasing him. More and more people gathered, but they were all skeptical of his words, because there was a tree on Taka's nose, which meant that he was a liar. While they were still being unsure about helping him, the blonde man caught up with him. From behind he howled, "Don't trust that man! He's trying to fool you!" The blonde man approached Taka. He let out an evil smile, saying, "Quit trying, no one is gonna believe you, dumbass." He slightly pressed his knife onto Taka's back and told Taka that he deserved this because he was a liar. Taka was helpless. He was exhausted and could no longer scream for help. Taka ended up having the same fate like that man he saw being killed. The tree on his nose got cut off and threw away. Taka still couldn't understand why he was being treated like this. Suddenly his nose started to move and ache painfully. It seemed like the roots started to spread out. From where it was cut, suddenly the tree sprouted back and grew quickly. As the tree grew bigger, the body of Taka slowly shrank. In just a moment there was nothing left of his body but the skeleton. His face became emaciated. But not only Taka, those who had trees on their nose also had the same fate. It turned out that the men dressing in black with an X sign on their chest had something to do with this, and the entire city was surrounded by a magnetic field controlled by a strange object which was created by the X organization. They were aliens and were working on an extremely scary experiment project.
The story took place at the final days of the school year. In a classroom, students were chatting, making plans for their upcoming trips. Only Lainey was lonely, sitting at her desk looking down, not talking to anyone. Lainey was once a cheerful, delighted girl. However, she suddenly became quiet, less sociable due to a large bruise on her face. As a result, she always used her hair to cover it. It was 7 months ago when a fire suddenly broke out in her laboratory. Lainey, a good-hearted girl, selflessly got inside and saved her injured friend. Unfortunately, the fire had took away her pretty face. Everything would be okay if Nora, the lucky girl who got saved by Lainey, didn't turn her back on Lainey. Neither being grateful for Lainey saving her nor feeling sympathetic, she disdained and disgusted Lainey. Nora told her friends that she was actually the one that saved Lainey, and Lainey was the one that caused the fire at the laboratory. She also added that Lainey was not good enough to be her friend, as she looked ugly. The lies of a friend made Lainey become a bad person, ugly inside and outside, and therefore she was hated and isolated. Lainey had a crush on a boy in her class. His name was Yuri. But all Lainey could do was to secretly watch him from afar. Lainey clearly knew that her love for Yuri wouldn't be returned, because Yuri was the class monitor and a great student who was admired by many. Unlike Lainey, she was just an ugly girl with a large bruise on her face. As if God had seen through the pain that the little girl had been going through, he gave Lainey a present. That day during the break, Lainey was walking down the hallway when she was suddenly stopped by a girl. The gorgeous girl was dressed in black with a large X sign on the front of her t-shirt. She greeted Lainey and told her that she had a special present for her. It looked like a water pot, but beautifully designed with a major blue color and a large X sign on it. The girl told Lainey that she just needed to step inside the pot and she would become the most gorgeous flower. But she had to remember that only those with pure souls would turn into the brightest flowers. Before leaving, the woman in black didn't forget to remind Lainey that the pot must be carefully protected and not to be given to anyone. With the bizarre item in her hands, Lainey started to have mixed feelings about it. Is this thing truly that magical? As soon as she got home, Lainey had a thought about it a lot. She truly wanted to be beautiful, at least to be like she was 7 months ago. But she was a little hesitant. Then, that night, out of curiosity, Lainey decided to try out the object. She secretly brought the pot to the bathroom. She anxiously placed her feet inside. As her fingers touched the water, her face immediately changed color. Her eyes widened with surprise. The invisible force from the water inside the pot softened her body and sucked her into it. However, Lainey started to feel comfortable. Despite being underwater, she didn't find it difficult for her to breathe. In fact, it was very relaxing. Just like that, she closed her eyes and let go of her body to the gentle stream, leaving the world filled with sorrow behind her. A few hours later, on the top of the pot appeared a small sprout, and it was growing. There was a flower bud on it, and within a night the bud had grown incredibly. The second night the giant bud started to flower. The thing inside the beautiful flower wasn't colorful petals. It was a human face that slowly started developing from it. The flower weighed down, and from inside of it coming out a person, and that person was Lainey. What the mysterious woman said was true. Lainey was reborn and now had become absolutely gorgeous. When Lainey got back to school, everyone was surprised and admired her. The bruise on her face had disappeared, and her face had become more delicate than ever before. Unlike before, now Lainey had more friends around her, but most of them were curious about how she could become that beautiful. So was Nora. Since she had seen the mysterious woman giving the pot to Lainey, Nora was doubtful about it. Nora also knew that Lainey secretly loved Yuri, so she came up with an idea to make Lainey reveal her secret. Seeing Lainey become more beautiful than she had been before, Nora was furious. Nora came to Lainey and asked her what it would be like if Yuri and the whole class found out about her secret. To threaten Lainey, Nora slammed her hand on the table and mentioned the pot. Lainey was a little bit shocked. She quickly looked at Yuri. Nora said that she just wanted to take a look at the pot and give it back to Lainey as soon as she's finished. Nora once again whispered to Lainey that she would help her win the heart of Yuri. Then Nora walked away and didn't forget to tell Lainey to come see her at the school restroom after school. For some reason, at that moment, Yuri's gaze was strange, as from behind he had heard all of their conversation. Nora and Lainey came to see each other at the school. Lainey didn't forget to bring the pot with her. She showed it to Nora. As Nora was looking at it, she had doubts about its magical capabilities. Obviously, Lainey's intention was just to show Nora the object that had helped her become gorgeous. But for someone like Nora, she wasn't just intending to simply look at it, as the deviousness could be easily seen in her eyes. As Lainey was off guard, Nora immediately kicked her in the belly. With the pot in her hands, Nora told Lainey that she wanted to borrow it and would return to it later. The kick made Lainey ache all over. She couldn't even get up. She didn't expect Nora to be so cunning. The pot had been taken away, and the next day Lainey didn't see Nora coming to the class. Worrying about her friend, yet also wanting to get the pot back, Lainey decided to go to Nora's house. Nora's aunt told her that she had come to one of her friends' house, a friend named Yuri, to study for exam. Feeling a little bit surprised, but having no choices left, Lainey had to come find Yuri to ask about Nora. The doorbell rang. Yuri appeared at the door. He was surprised to see Lainey. Lainey was shy and confused. It took her a while to finally ask him about Nora. Yuri told her that Nora had come to his house to borrow some books, but had already left the night before. Yuri was also worried about Nora as she didn't come to class this morning. Yuri comforted Lainey, saying that perhaps Nora had overslept at her friend's house. He would tell Lainey right away if he had any news about Nora. Lainey said goodbye to him and left. However, Yuri suddenly remembered something. He called Lainey and told her that Nora had asked him to give her something. Lainey was surprised, not knowing what it was. Then Lainey followed Yuri to his room. Yuri told Lainey to wait for him as he brought it out. Yuri told her that Nora was too shy to give it back to her, so she had asked him to do it for her, and it looked like something important. Lainey started to lose her patience. She was wondering to herself if it was the pot. It turned out that her guess was true. Yuri brought the pot and gave it to Lainey. Lainey was delighted as soon as she saw the pot. She breathed a sigh of relief. She was surprised that Nora did give it back to her, but wondered why she had asked Yuri to do it for her. As Lainey stood up to take the pot, she found herself stepping onto something. Curiously, she looked down and saw a root sticking out. Lainey expressed her curiosity to Yuri. But Yuri didn't let her finish her sentence. He immediately explained that he had got himself some flower branches to plant some trees. As he was about to plant them, he had some guests coming over, so he put them under the bed in order not to dirty his room. Lainey didn't ask him more about the roots. She took the pot and thanked Yuri for keeping it for her. As Lainey left, Yuri breathed a sigh of relief, but still felt worried. He leaned onto the wall and sighed as if he had lost all the power in his legs. He slid to the floor. His secret was exposed. It turned out that day, after hearing about the two girls' conversation, Yuri had secretly followed Nora and found out about the magic of the pot. Yuri followed her to her home. He climbed onto the balcony and secretly watched her using the pot. Yuri was shocked to see Nora being sucked into it. So he immediately broke into her room and took away the pot. Just like what had happened to Lainey, a sprout started growing out of the pot. Seeing the sprout, Yuri started to have some evil thoughts in his mind. Thinking that it would be an astounding discovery for him, Yuri was extremely curious to know what the sprout would turn into. However, opposite to Lainey, when the flower bloomed, the thing that came out of it was not a gorgeous girl, but a monster. Nora's face had become ugly, and her limbs had turned into roots that looked creepy and disgusting. Yuri was shocked when he saw it. A tree, man? This great discovery could help him become famous, so he kept Nora in his room and was confident that Nora was now nothing but an inanimate plant. Back to the present, Yuri tried to regain his composure. He got up and walked to his bed. Thinking that Lainey would no longer want to find Nora since he had returned the pot to her, the disappearance of Nora wouldn't worry him anymore. Yuri stood in front of his bed, certain that no one would disturb his plan. He leaned down and looked under his bed. Under his bed was no one but Nora, as she looked so pitiful. Her hair was messed up, eyes popped out, her face was disfigured, and her mouth was being stuffed with a dirty towel that prevented her from saying anything. The expression of Yuri was scary. He smirked and let out an evil laugh. It seemed like he was having an evil plan in his mind. At that moment, Nora, with tears all over her face, was constantly begging him. But it was all meaningless to him, as he told her that she was nothing more than just an inanimate plant, and he would sell her to the black market for research. Right that moment, Lainey immediately rushed in, held at Yuri, demanded him to stop his cruel acts. As Yuri heard her voice, he turned around, his face dripping with sweat, clearly as he was surprised to see her. It turned out that from that moment she saw the roots under his bed and the perplexing expression of Yuri. Lainey had assumed that he was trying to hide something, so she called the police and returned to catch him red-handed. Seeing Lainey, Yuri immediately justified his action. He said that he didn't have any bad intentions. Moreover, Nora was a bastard, so he just wanted to punish her for Lainey. Of course, the reasons that he made it up was unacceptable to her. She took his hands off her and coldly told him that the police was outside. Yuri was scared. His face changed colors, and he was no longer angry. Now he was terrified and desperate. Beside Lainey were the cops that she had previously called for help, and eventually Yuri had to pay for the crimes he committed. The moral of the story is, an evil soul would never be replaced with a pure, beautiful soul, no matter how many times one could be reborn, and a crime will always be exposed and get paid as the truth prevails.